On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about Casualties of Cool, an album by Casualties of Cool. We'll talk about that in a bit. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Bronze Metalist podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
And today we are going to be talking about the album Casualties of Cool. As I said in the intro, it is also technically the name of the act, but the act is made up of specifically
Devin Townsend,
who is a legendary, I guess, just brilliant guitar virtuoso type, amazing vocalist. Who has worked with, let's see, what was the band that he came up with where he was
Strapping Young Lad?
Well, I'm thinking of
he was with
who did he fill in? That was Steve Vai. That's right.
He was sang for Steve Vai.
He sang for Steve Vai, and then had his own projects in Strapping Young Lad, and then a multitude of other young projects. A multitude of other projects until about, I think, 2005 is when Devin Townsend project really sort of took over.
Right, just did his own thing.
And started doing his own thing, and his work contains, his body of work is just massive, and
there's a lot of metal in there.
There is a ton of metal in there. We'll talk a little bit more about Devin later when we get into the album discussion. The other half of the album is Che-Ami Dorval, who is
also brilliant,
also a Canadian musician. Didn't mention that with Devin. He's a Canuck.
He's a Canuck. He's from the West Coast.
I think so. Yeah. I think he's from British Columbia.
Yep.
Yeah, Che-Ami Dorval, also a Canadian musician, and she's fantastic. Great vocalist, great guitarist. We'll get to them later. Oh, my notes are behind you there.
There we go.
Fresh off the printer. There we go.
Almost took a sniff. I love smelling stuff right off the printer.
It's not quite fresh off the printer, so the pages aren't still warm. I like that.
Yes, I as well.
Warm paper. That's nice. Do you ever have you ever waited so long to do laundry that when you do laundry and it comes out, you have need, perhaps, of a fresh pair of underwear?
Yes.
And you just put one on right after it comes out of the dryer.
Nice and hot. Oh, yeah.
That's
the best.
That's a great feeling. It's an amazing feeling.
You know what else is an amazing feeling?
What is?
Turning 23.
Okay. I was going to get to that in a sec. It's my birthday coming up on Friday.
So, and this is coming out on Friday, correct?
Well, the trend lately has been Sunday because I'm lazy.
Well, let's do this anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy birthday, my friend.
What the fuck is this? Oh my God! You actually... Whoa, dude! Dude!
Yeah.
Oh my God! I'm glad... Okay, so OJ has just slid over a little container towards me, and it's Die Hard dice. And inside is a full set of brass D&D. Oh wow, they're so hefty.
Yeah,
brass
awesome.
Dice
copper.
or copper.
Yeah,
dice for Dungeons and Dragons. I suppose I had mentioned that.
Yeah, you did.
And then well, thank you, man.
You're welcome.
Because I think I had mentioned that to my parents too, and they were like, "Well, we don't know what to get you," so they got me an Amazon card, but I hadn't. I hadn't used it yet, so. Oh my gosh! Thank you, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
These are. I gotta roll one. Gotta clear a little bit of room. Table's a little crowded today. Oh,
nice and solid.
I like the sound of that. That's great. These are awesome. I have a huge D&D game coming up tomorrow that I'm DMing, so I'm definitely gonna use these.
All right, you're welcome.
Them off. Thank you, dude. That is awesome.
Yeah.
You didn't need to do that.
I know I didn't. I ain't got to do shit.
You're a goddamn adult, which actually means you do have to do.
Yeah,
a
which
fair
means
amount of
I'm
shit.
required to do a lot of things.
But wow, I was not expecting that whatsoever. Thank you.
Yeah, I bought those last week.
You bought them last week, did you?
Yeah.
All right. The other thing that I have on the table here is something that I got myself for my birthday, which is for the first time somehow in my life as a massive Lord of the Rings fan. I finally have the box set Blu-ray.
That's beautiful.
Of the extended editions. Yeah, take a look at it.
That's a beautiful box.
Yeah, it's a sort of gold film box, and it just has all the Blu-rays. There's a map of Middle-earth on the inside cover, and it's
fancy.
I don't know why it has taken me so long to just buy. I mean, it's expensive. That was like $80.
I was sitting down and watching all of these back. I've tried to do it.
I've
tried to watch
editions?
all the extended editions, all 3 movies back to back, and it's not.
It's
time consuming.
I mean, obviously, yeah. That's 12 hours,
something like that. Yeah,
something like a little over 12 hours. Because I know just the Fellowship of the Ring extended is like 420, something like that.
Nice,
bro.
420.
Whoa, dude. So yeah, it would be a gargantuan task. I'm not planning on doing that, but I think Herculean almost a Frodolian.
Frodolian.
That needs to be a popular thing. Just a big old task for someone who's not prepared.
Exactly. Who has to be carried up a mountain.
Got to be carried up a mountain at the end. I I think that should enter into the popular consciousness as a term, is Frodolian task.
It's almost Samwisian.
It's almost a Samwisian. You have to be the heart and soul of the of the pair. You actually have to do most of the work. That's I love Sam as a character, and I think certainly, he without it, the world would have ended.
Well, sure.
Without Samwise, but
it would have all collapsed.
I think a lot of people who are big Sam fans, as they rightly should be, do tend to undervalue also Frodo's contribution. Just the fact that he carried the ring for so long and did not
didn't go completely insane.
Didn't go completely insane. And
he didn't become Gollum too.
Yeah, until I suppose right there at the end,
right,
when he sort of faltered. But it took that long. It took like a whole year. I mean, doesn't seem that long in the movies, but in the books, I think it's like the whole journey is like a year.
Right.
A whole year that it takes them to get to Mordor.
In the movie, it's 12 hours.
Yeah. Or 9 if you're watching the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
There's a whole nother movie they added in, basically, in the extended editions, which I find fascinating. But yeah, I had to get it because I'm a big Tolkien fan. I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. I say that as someone who has not read the Silmarillion.
Oh, you haven't read the Silmarillion? The Silmarillion is really hard to read, though.
I got a chapter in. It's tough, and I'm lazy. That should be apparent to the listener by now.
Sure.
But yeah, someday. I did read Children of Hurin, which is a slog in its own right. It's not nearly as long as the Silmarillion, but Children of Hurin is a bit of it's a depressing fucking book. And well, that's not J.R.R. Tolkien. That's technically Christopher Tolkien, but all of the material comes from his father's notes.
Sure.
It is still, I believe, the primary author title still goes to J.R.R., mostly because I think it was something that he was working on before he passed away. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was always working on everything. And the same goes with the Silmarillion. The Silmarillion was only completed by Christopher.
Right. He wouldn't have published anything had it not been for other people.
Yeah, for the most
part.
Other
people intervened in J.R.R. Tolkien's life.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? It was, who was it that interviewed and made him put out The Hobbit? It was
I can't recall.
C.S. Lewis, I believe.
Probably something like that. I
believe it was C.S. Lewis.
I was watching extras from Fellowship, and they were talking about the development of the books.
Yeah.
And how before The Hobbit came out, and when it was going into publishing, the way that the publishing of The Hobbit worked is the publisher, who was a big publisher of children's novels at the time in the 30s, gave the book to his son to read, and basically, on his young son's recommendation, a book would or would not be published.
Right.
His son would write like a book report at the end and say, "This is what the book is about. This is what I learned from it."
And if he didn't get it, then it wasn't going up.
If he didn't get it, and if if it didn't have a valuable lesson or something like that, it wasn't going up. Mm-hmm. And the kid thought it was amazing, and so The Hobbit came into the world. And then, of course, later they were like, "You're always writing all of this shit. make a sequel. And instead of making a sequel, he made 3, and it was less of a sequel and more of its own thing.
Right.
Especially tonally.
Yeah, and they wanted it to be one book.
Yeah.
The publisher wanted it to be one book.
Thank God it wasn't.
Yeah.
And that was something that I didn't know about The Fellowship, the movie, is when they were, shopping producers trying to get it made. Miramax, which was, I think, probably one of the wealthiest film companies at the time.
Yeah.
Miramax wanted it to be, I think, 1 or 2 movies. And Peter Jackson just said no.
It's got to be 3.
It's got to be 3. And it's kind of funny because that's the opposite of what happened with The Hobbit. It's been a little while since I watched that Lindsay Ellis video about The Hobbit and how all of that worked. I don't know how much of the whole 3-movie business was really Peter's fault, but whatever.
Gotta love Lindsay Ellis too.
Yeah, Lindsay Ellis is a fantastic YouTuber. Does great video essays about film. Check her out. Definitely worth a watch if you're interested in a variety of nerdery subjects and whatnot. What else is going on? Birthdays coming up. Yeah, I think Friday what I'm just going to be doing is just I bought myself a little bottle of Bushmills.
Ooh.
And I'm just going to sit down with that and I think start watching the extended editions.
Right on
Friday. Going to sit down with it and start watching.
Lord of the Rings, Irish whiskey.
That's a night.
That's a night.
That's a night. So, yeah, that's my plan so far. What else? I thought I might still get to interview Jeff Foxworthy at work.
That's going to be interesting.
I might still. We haven't gotten anything back from his people.
Really?
At least as of earlier today. I don't know. That might change tomorrow when I come into work, but maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. I don't know.
You might be a redneck if you can't land an interview on country radio in Minot, North Dakota.
Well, it's not that he couldn't let I'm very happy to do it. It's just that it's just their people his people have to schedule it.
Sure.
So yeah, that'd be I'm not going to say anything bad about Jeff Foxworthy. His style of comedy is not really for me, but
he's made me chuckle.
Oh, he's definitely funny. Like, he's definitely a funny guy. He's clever. It's just I'm not really his demographic.
No.
Despite having grown up in a very rural area and watched a good amount of CMT in my youth, I'm just not really his demographic.
Right.
But yeah, that'd be a very interesting interview, and if it happens, we'll talk about it, I suppose.
Indeed.
A little bit.
Next week.
Unless something terrible happens, and it would be unprofessional for me to talk about it.
Where's he playing
outside of work?
Playing at Four Bears Casino and Lodge.
Yeah. Now we're I guess shilling for Jeff Foxworthy for free though. We're shilling for free.
Are we shilling for free? And for Four Bears for free. So what do we got going on here? We got some Scotch ale.
Yes, I saw the name. So I went by when I was going to get my Bushmills, and then also I just decided it was once again my turn to go to the liquor store to contribute tonight, and I grabbed Old Chub Scotch Ale. I saw the name, and there was no way I wasn't going to get it. Old Chub.
Old Chub.
I have to wonder if that's in reference to something, if it's an inside joke, or if it's a thing in its own right.
I don't think it has to do with a geriatric erection.
I would hope not.
I think it has to do with
a very well. I was going to say very short, but that'd be Old Chode.
That would be.
That would be Old Chub or Old Chode Scotch Ale.
Yeah.
But
which
yeah,
would be a different thing.
Brewed in Colorado by Oscar Blues Brewery. And I saw they have a whole bunch of other beers that were sitting there as well. They had an IPA of some manner and some other things, but I was like, we've drank enough IPAs on this show. Yeah. I think it's time for something a little bit different. A Scotch ale, very brown.
Very brown and kind of sticky. It's got a little bit of stickiness to it.
Yes, that is an astute observation about the beer. I'm not a very good beer taster.
No,
like I'm not a good taster of anything. I was kind of developing my palate for whiskey a little bit, and then I mostly stopped drinking whiskey. But this week is my birthday, so
that all changes.
But Yeah, I'm not a good taster of alcohol, I find.
I like to make beer.
Yeah, you've mentioned that.
I'm a maker of beer. I do. I made a honey IPA. It was the last one I made, and that was years ago. That was.
I tried to inhale some of the old chub.
Do not inhale the old chub.
That would probably be an unwise decision. Continue though. You made a honey IPA.
A honey IPA. It was made with locally sourced honey. It was, like bee parts and everything.
Wow.
It wasn't it wasn't refined. It was
like, did you go
right
find a beekeeper around here and just like, hey, I want your honey?
My friend. Yeah. Hey, baby. No, it was it was a friend of mine named John. He was hauling honey for a company, and he had a case of it, and he gave me a case of honey. So I made several batches of this honey IPA. It was
nice.
really, really good.
It sounds good.
Yeah.
I technically made beer with my dad, but it was like it was a pre-kit sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It was I don't remember the company, but it was just a little kit basically. It had a big plastic barrel that you would use and all that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I had plastic food containers that I made mine in, and it was with 2-row barley. It was special 2-row barley that I got from my friend Farmer Bob, who died tragically in a car wreck. So I can't get. I mean, all the supplies
people
and equipment. They're all dead now.
That you could recommend. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so I miss Farmer Bob. He was awesome.
That is the fun thing about living in a rural area where you can so easily connect with people, though, is if you want to do something like that, it's so easy to get like local ingredients and stuff like that, especially around for like grain related stuff around here.
Yeah, we have a lot of grain here.
If you wanted to do something with fruit, that might be different.
You might
not going to have a lot of luck.
That's going to cross state lines.
Couple apple orchards somewhere maybe.
Yes.
Maybe some strawberries. It's cold enough. Other than that, not a whole lot. If it's not a fruit that grows in cold temperatures, you won't find it here.
Rhubarb is not a fruit.
That's true.
But you can use it.
You can use it. I've had rhubarb wine.
Oh yeah.
That's not bad.
Not bad at all.
Let's see. What else was I going to say? Oh, about bees.
Bees.
My brother-in-law used to work for bee. Well, I was going to say an apiary. That's not really what it was. It's just a beekeeper. And he would haul his hives down to Florida for the summer or for the winter.
Right. That's what my friend John did. He hauled them to California.
Okay.
Same thing.
And that's how I got a pet gecko. Actually,
nice.
My brother-in-law. I think my sister had been dating him then for like it was probably a year or two at the time. They were both still in high school, I think. Mm-hmm. Or at least Ethan was, because she's a year older than Ethan. But he was, working on the beat trucks that summer, and he comes by our house, and he's got this ice cream bucket, this empty ice cream bucket. He's like, I found something for Kale, because he knew I liked lizards. And there was a gecko that had rode all the way up from Florida on this beat truck.
Nice.
And he'd caught it and put it in there, and I had that gecko for 4 years. It lived a while, especially for a wild gecko.
They don't live that long in captivity.
Yeah, it lived for a long time, and I'm still not sure if it just died of old age or if my mom might have accidentally killed it because she painted my room while he was in there.
Oh, died of fume overdose.
Might have been fume overdose, but he was a very old gecko, so lost his tail once when we were trying to clean his cage, and it never quite grew back right. There was always a kink at the end of his tail. That was just at an awkward angle, and it never really grew back right.
I feel bad that I microwaved a gecko once.
You microwaved a gecko?
Yeah.
On purpose?
Yeah, I was with a friend of mine. He said, well, it wasn't me. It was actually him. His name was Scott, and he said, you check out what they do after they come out of the microwave.
Oh, no. What did they do?
Die. They died.
They didn't die in the microwave?
No, he came out, he went...
God, that's terrible, though.
Yeah.
That's some serial killer shit.
It is some serial killer shit. You should see the parts I have buried in the backyard.
That's terrible, though. Yeah, he would... I say he. I have no idea.
You didn't sex the gecko.
Yeah, I have no idea the gecko's actual gender, but I suppose, it would chirp every once in a while at night. It would
Did
chirp.
they do the...
I don't remember it doing that. I don't actually remember it doing that. It was mostly more like that. It would be soft little chirps. It was never very loud.
Yeah, when I lived in the Philippines, I moved back to the United States from the Philippines, and I couldn't sleep for a while because there was no
clicking of small lizards.
Yeah.
That's it. That's cool.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Cool. Yeah, you couldn't keep them out of the house, but you didn't want to because they ate mosquitoes. So
yeah. Hey, speaking of cool.
Oh, hey.
Coolness has some casualties.
It does.
So yeah, casualties of cool. I don't know what to call this album. Like it's so I will start with what Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. The genres that Wikipedia assigns this album, because there are a number. You've got country rock, blues rock, chamber rock, ambient, alternative country. And I think somewhere betwixt the middle of all of those, you have the sound. You find the sound of it. This is very much a departure for Devin Townsend's style. I think it's much more in Che Amy Dorval's style. Mm-hmm. I've listened to some of her solo stuff, and it's a lot more ethereal and kind of
so this leans more in her direction.
Strange. I would say so, and I think it's. According to the background that I read here and that I've heard in interviews that he gave, this is, I mean, it's more in her wheelhouse, musically speaking, but this is definitely the type of music that he wanted to be making at the time. And
probably why he connected with her to do it.
Yeah. I think they had worked together a little bit previously, or at the very least they knew each other. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they started working on it in 2010 while he was in the middle of him working on his album Epic Cloud, which is this big, just grand, huge, sort of progressive metal, progressive rock album. I mean, everything he does is massive. It sounds huge.
It's over the top.
It's over the top.
And some of that is actually, you'll find that in
yes,
here. You'll find some of those elements.
There are moments of that. The whole album, it's so echoey, this album. And not like... Not in a weird, like, bad way. It fills whatever space it's in, and it makes it feel big and open, but kind of empty a little bit.
At the same time,
there's a huge amount of mystery in the sound of this album, which is perfect for, I guess, the subject matter and the vocals as well. God, the vocals,
so great.
Oh, they're just layered and just dripping with atmosphere, and that goes for both of them. Devin Townsend goes for a very subdued.
It's almost a whisper at times.
Almost. And I've watched some of their live performances, and he picks it up a little bit more simply because it's a live performance, and in order to get that same sound out of the microphone, you would have to get really, really up on it, and then also have the gain turned up, and that could have negative effects for your instruments.
Right, that's going to be hard to do live.
So he ratchets up his vocals a little bit to be more on par with Che's, but his vocals, generally speaking, are more of the background type vocal, and just very, very soft and
but background, but yet at the foreground.
Yes,
at the same time
somehow. Well, I mean, because Devin Townsend is famous. I was going to say infamous, but infamous would imply bad.
Yeah.
He's famous for using sort of wall of sound vocals on his albums.
Everything's layered.
Yes, tons and tons and tons of layers. I watched a video of him explaining how he layers his vocals, and there were like 7 tracks. And each of them was a slightly different take, still on time, but a slightly different take with different effects layered on it. And that's not to say that he needs effects, because he's a fantastic vocalist.
Fantastic.
He's an amazing singer, and I found this interesting trend ever since I started listening to Devin Townsend a little bit, where it's been sort of this trend with vocal coaches on YouTube to do reaction videos of them watching a Devin Townsend live performance, and without fail, they're all like, "Oh my God,
that's great!"
I watched one earlier today where it was this British woman who was listening to him, and she, like, after like the first note, she paused it, and it looked like she was having an orgasm. Like, I'm not exaggerating very much there. Like, it looked like she was just in throes of musical bliss.
Nice.
And it was he's a great vocalist, and he has an extreme amount of range.
He does.
He can do screams. He can do growls. He can do nasty, just...
He can do beautiful, clean stuff.
And amazing, beautiful, operatic. Just, he's ridiculous. Ridiculously talented. Great guitarist, great songwriter.
And kind of a ridiculous person.
Yeah, he's very funny and just a very silly guy.
Yeah.
Loves to have fun. He doesn't take himself super seriously.
No, he can't.
And if you actually look at like music videos for the Devin Townsend project, it's very clear because a lot of them are like animated with cartoon characters and whatnot. And speaking of which, there is a music video for the second song on this album, which is Mountaintop, which
beautiful song.
Yes, Mountaintop is. I mean, everything is beautiful.
It's all beautiful,
here. Yeah. But the music video for Mountaintop ties into the, I guess, core concept of the album, which is something that on my first probably 10 listens, because I've listened to this album a ton over the last 6 months, probably. Sure. Something that is not very apparent is the core concept. You get the idea of it is this sort of ethereal and kind of spacey feeling to it. You can get the idea of some sci-fi elements because there's a fair amount of very almost hard to pick up at times electronic elements and samples that are going on in the background that you can hear. But the concept of the album, according to Wikipedia, is that Townsend described it as a story about a traveler that is lured to a sentient planet which feeds on the traveler's fear. The traveler finds solace in an old radio and later an old phonograph, and that radio is what is on the album cover. Sure. This old-timey radio with smoke coming up from it. Eventually, he confronts his own fear, and his force of will to not submit to the fear liberates a woman held inside the planet, which also frees his own soul.
Are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
There's some of that, like that part always gives me goosebumps.
I know.
Like it gives you chills. There's... that is also the thing. We've talked about how beautiful this album is. It is also... It sneaks up on you.
It does.
Like you can be sitting there thinking, oh, wow, this is beautiful. And then all of a sudden something just changes and there's like rumbles and noises and just weird shit starts happening.
And it gives you the chills.
It gives you the chills, and it's like... I heard Devin Townsend is on here calling it Haunted Johnny Cash.
Right. Because a lot of the guitar picking is very Johnny Cash-like.
Very Johnny Cash-like, very old country.
Right. That's kind of where it ends, though. For me, it seems to be
the guitar and the upright bass.
Yeah.
The upright bass is another. I think pretty much all of the bass seems to be played on an upright.
Yes.
This is the way it sounds anyway. There's also lots of saxophone on there. We'll get to the... let's talk about the personnel on here. If I can find the fucking page. There's a lot of pages.
Pages here. And pages.
So the drums were done by Morgan Agron, who is from a band called Kaipa. The flute in the woodwinds, which is actually a fairly large part of this album. That's another musical element that is fused in here. Is there's a fair amount of like Native American music that has, or Native American influenced music.
Yes.
On this album as well.
Well, I guess it'd be First Nation.
For Canadians, I suppose.
Yeah.
But Kat Eppel was responsible for the flute in the woodwinds. Jürgen Munkeby played the saxophones. He's from a band called Shining. Let's see. Additional keyboards by Dave Young. Additional drums. A lot of it is additional string arrangements by Randy Slough. And there's also choirs. That's the Sangkraft Choir. And then Leif Akison was the conductor for the choir.
No, I'm surprised Reese Fulber isn't involved in this somehow.
Is he a frequent collaborator with Devin?
No, but it sounds a lot of the production on this sounds a lot like Frontline Assembly. If you know who they are, they're a Canadian sort of.
It sounds very familiar.
Yeah, they're sort of a techno. It's sort of a techno group from Canada. It's Reese Fulber and another guy whose name I can't remember. But they worked with the band we've talked about before, Fear Factory.
Okay.
But a lot of the stuff on here just sounds like something Reese would have done.
I mean, it certainly could be an influence.
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot of it, especially like I'm listening to, I'm not as familiar with this as you are. I mean, you gave this to me, this past
couple
week
of days ago,
a few days ago, and I listened to it, and I'm listening, going, this is Reese Fulmer influence, and a lot of times I can actually just feel the influence of that just washing over me.
It's certainly a possibility. That sounds like something that would definitely be on Devin's radar.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, first of all, Canadian.
Sure.
Second of all, involved with metal acts and just being a musician of that type, that seems like very much something that he would be aware of and possibly, emulated to some degree.
Well, and come to think of it, because I follow Devin on Twitter.
Okay.
He was talking about listening to the new Frontline Assembly album. I guess it's possibly why it hit me, because they have a new album out. He's also talking about listening to the new In Flames album, which I would love to eventually get to that somewhere down the road as well.
We'll talk at the end of the episode about what special thing we have coming up for next week, because we'll have 5 episodes in March, which hasn't happened to us before.
That's unusual.
We have not had 5 episodes in a month, so this sort of extra episode next week is going to be a special one. It's something that we've been waiting to do, but we'll talk about that. We'll leave you hanging for a little while,
sweet
dear listener. Some other things. We'll talk about the background now a little bit.
Okay.
So yeah, they started working on it in 2010. Apparently, they recorded this all independently of each other, or at least their vocals.
Really?
The Che and Devin were on opposite ends of the country. I think Che is from Toronto, or at the very least Eastern Canada, and Devin is from British
BC.
Columbia.
Yeah.
And so, at least that's what we think, because you said West Coast, so I'm like, that would make sense that they're on opposite sides. So they recorded their vocals separately.
Yeah, he's actually from the Vancouver area.
Okay.
It's where he was born, that area.
But they recorded separately, and then Che would send her tracks over to Devin, and he would, start producing the bones of the album and the bones of the songs, and then more and more elements getting to be added in later over the top in almost like a post-production type manner, instead of it all being done at once. And I think that's part of why this album is so wonderfully layered, because it didn't get done all at once.
It's put together by hand.
Yeah. It was hand fitted.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous. He describes it as late night music, completely isolated sounding and different than anything I've done. Che sings most of the leads, which is true. She does true. most of the lead work is the best term for it. The higher vocals, she has her vocals are more naked than Devin's, is the term I can think of.
Hers are not as layered as his.
They're not as layered.
Yeah, because I watched that video too of him doing his voice, and it actually almost gave me a panic attack watching him, because I'm thinking I'd like to record some more vocals someday, and I'm just thinking if that's what it takes, I can't do it.
I don't think necessarily.
I'm put 16 different effects on this one different layer, and I'm going to use this
perfect
program
times, because he
float it to this program.
He's an audio engineer.
Oh, he is.
I think that really influences so much of his work, and
he's a nerd.
He's a giant nerd.
He's a giant
basically. Nerd. And he's willing to do all of it himself, which is, very seems to have a very DIY ethic about him. But yeah, Che, her vocals tend to be a bit less layered, but she has just an incredibly rich and sultry and sexy is the best
very
term I can
sexy.
think of. Very, very sensual, very sexy voice. Is the best term I can think of. You almost don't want to say that. You don't want to boil it down to that kind of value, because it can sound like you're not valuing.
Yeah,
like you're being sexist and you're not valuing.
I mean, let's not be
the vocals for the right
let's
thing.
Let's not get off track here. Devin's vocals are pretty damn sexy too.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. I mean, I talked about how he seemed to bring that vocal coach to orgasm earlier. But yeah, she's just got a very sensual voice, kind of almost like old timey or old style,
right?
Like reminding you of like very very soulful type R&B type vocals or energy that she brings to her vocals, and it fits perfectly with the old timey feel but it's an old timey feel that is layered over with so much science fiction.
Sure.
And it's like a spooky version of Firefly. If this was a movie, it would be Firefly, but they discover a planet. They discover planet Terror. not the Robert Rodriguez movie.
Not Planet Terror, right, exactly. I can imagine listening to this album in a dark car on a long distance journey.
Yeah. I absolutely would do that.
Yeah.
It would be like thinking about if somebody listened to this album on mushrooms, what type of time they would have.
You'd have a good time, I think. I have a feeling. Tell you what are you doing next week?
Well,
I tell you what.
It would be a weird time, I think, because there's a lot of it that's you could probably definitely very much get into on if you were on some sort of psychedelic, but
or even just weed.
Even just weed. I feel like there are some parts that might trip you out a little bit, like that you might not be having a great time after the first part where it kind of goes, oh, what was that? Oh, I'm scared now.
Even without the mushrooms, I was in my kitchen and it was a dark kitchen doing dishes, and I saw my reflection in a window, and I went, "Who are you?"
There is the song. I believe one of the first ones is Haida, and that one is one of the first ones that really kind of brings in sort of the fearful elements. If we bring it back to the concept of this is a sentient planet of some sort that is preying on his fears. It's the first one that sort of pulls that in. And once I was aware of the concept, because the concept is something that I didn't know about until a couple of days ago.
Right, and you'd listened to it many times
I'd listened
before
to
that.
It so many times. This is one of my go-to albums when I'm doing logs at work, which is, I schedule the songs, and then it's my responsibility to sort them and make sure...
You hand place all the country music.
More or less. I mean, it puts the songs in there for me, but then it's my job to figure out the order depending upon what sort of energy the song has.
This used to be my job.
Yeah,
before
used to be your job.
They came to me and said, "Hey, would you mind if we took this job away from you and gave it to Kale?" I'm like, "Oh my God, please,
please give it to the new guy.
Please give it to the new guy."
Yeah, and it's I don't mind it so much because I actually don't mind tedious work like that.
I didn't either because of things like this. Because I would do stuff like exactly what you're talking about.
You get to space out and listen to
something
music
beautiful.
And I would often though I end up listening to podcasts.
Yeah,
I find that
who does that? Who listens to podcasts?
Who would do something like that?
What kind of a crazy person
would listen to a couple of people talk about random nonsense?
Terrible.
It's crazy, but yeah, I'll listen to podcasts while I do logs, because for some reason, just like listening to human speech, just like a couple of people talking, I tend to get it done a little bit more efficiently. When I'm listening to something like Casualties of Cool, I tend to slow down a little bit because I actually start focusing on the music too much.
Sure.
And I start losing myself in the music a little bit,
which is fine.
It's fine because I'm usually not rushed, except on Fridays. When I have,
you have to do Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Yeah, I have 3 days to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, Casualties really became one of my go-to bands, just because it is, or albums really, just because it is such an interesting album, and as many times as I've listened to it, I'm still discovering new things and
new nuances.
And I love albums like that.
And they probably won't do another one of these.
As far as I know, there aren't plans to. I don't know how much they're doing together. I know I was looking on Che's Instagram, and there's pictures recently of her and Devin at events.
Sure.
So I don't know if they're still doing shows as Casualties, or if there's any plans on new material from them. I think it kind of depends on what their solo careers are up to at the time, if they're both kind of feeling the same vibe at the same moment and going, okay, well, we've both got ideas, let's start putting them together and make another album.
At the risk of sounding weirdly progressive, I love how he ties himself in with some of the very extremely strong, extremely talented women.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Who's his more
Anneke
frequent?
van Giersbergen.
Yeah, That's an amazing name too, Anneke van Giersbergen. That's fantastic.
I'm not going to expound about how I feel about Anneke van Giersbergen.
She's very attractive, and has a great voice. I don't know a whole bunch more about her, but she's.
I'm going to remain silent.
Okay, you go ahead and do that. But yes, she's great. She's fantastic.
She's amazing.
Okay, you're getting creepy now. You went from progressive to creepy real fucking quick. I'm gonna need you to dial that back just a couple of notches, just a few notches.
Okay.
We'll go back over to appreciation.
All right. Okay. I appreciate.
But yeah, he certainly does. I think, and it's because the thing that I've always liked, especially about metal bands that have a bit of both. There's an Australian metalcore / their earlier works were deathcore band called Make Them Suffer, and they've always had a female backup vocalist that does clean vocals. First it was there was their original one. I don't know if she did backing vocals actually, but she was their keyboardist. And then they had Louisa Burton, who was with them for 2 full-length albums, and yeah, I think it was the 2 full-length albums. But when they started coming up, basically, she was with them. And then their most recent album is with Book of Nile, who replaced Louisa, because Louisa, I think...
Book of Nile is great.
Book of Nile. You know what?
Of course.
I didn't know. I guess I didn't...
Book of Nile, yeah.
I didn't know you were aware of her.
Why? Yeah.
But yeah, she's with them now and was on their most recent album. And does the same thing, keyboards and backing vocals. And it's always provided just another element from the music to their music, because it's nice to reel back some of the aggression a little bit. And deathcore is one of the most ridiculously hyper-masculine genres out there, even more than standard death metal. It tends to be there tends to be this stereotype of like the tough guy deathcore band,
right,
where they're trying too hard. And I think having some sort of female presence in the band kind of dials that back and makes it less cringy. And it's like, okay, we're musicians, let's make something a little bit nice.
It less cringy. Like
there are some deathcore bands out there
that are cringy,
where I listen to their stuff or watch a music video and I'm like, fuck this. This is just,
dude, get past yourself.
Yeah, just get over it. Yeah. And like the music, it's mostly the music videos, because some of the guys that I've met in bands like that are just they're normal dudes, but they for some reason put on this affectation when they do shows and when they're in their music that doesn't need to be there. It's like, just make heavy, like really fucking heavy stuff. You don't need to have this sort of weird element to it. That's why I like concept bands like you've got Shadow of Intent. Is they can't really take themselves a whole like crazy amount of seriously, because their first 2 albums were themed from the background of the Halo games.
It's a video game.
Yeah, guys. It's songs about a video game. So how seriously can we take ourselves? But speaking of Halo, a digression.
Okay, quick digression.
Another fun birthday gift to me is that the Master Chief Collection, which now will include Halo Reach.
Okay.
So now there's 6 games in it, is going to be coming out on Steam.
Nice.
Within the year, sometime within the year, they're going to start putting it out on Steam. The
so
way
you
it's
can play it on PC now.
Yeah, so I can play all 6 of the main Halo titles. Well, not all 6, because Halo 5 is out there. I think you can now play Halo 5 on the PC, like right now.
Really?
Or at the very least, they've been working on getting that done for a while. But at any rate, because Microsoft is doing this thing now where they're trying to have as many games as possible compatible with Windows 10 as well as Xbox.
Sure.
And
through Steam, that's a
it's a great platform, and the way that they're rolling it out is interesting, because it is you buy the collection, but I don't know how much the collection costs. But the way it works is then when each game is done being ported to PC, that is when it is added to the collection. So I think they're going chronologically.
Okay.
They're starting with Halo Reach. The next will be Halo Combat Evolved, which was the first one. Mm-hmm. Technically, it's the anniversary edition, so the campaign has the updated graphics that came out in 2011.
Okay.
And then Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, and Halo 4. In that order, they're going to be coming out on PC, and I imagine it's going to have all the same features that the Master Chief Collection had on the Xbox One, hopefully with all of the fixes that they've added in over the last 4 years, because when the Master Chief Collection came out on Xbox One, it was kind of a mess. Mm-hmm. Like, you were supposed to have cross-game matchmaking, and they did, and it worked, but not very well. And there was all sorts of glitches and problems, and every single fix they put out created more glitches than it fixed, it seemed, and I gave up on it really quickly.
Okay.
And it was a decent enough investment, because it was $40 for, at the time, 4 games.
Nice. That's
and four of my favorite games.
$10 a piece.
So it's a great deal as well, especially if you like Halo.
I'll be honest, I've never played Halo.
Yeah. Well, now if you had a gaming PC, you could.
I have a laptop, and
I don't know how well that would really work.
It barely works Flash. Flash barely works on my.
I don't think the Master Chief Collection is going to work very well for you.
No.
Oh, also Halo 2 has got anniversary mode now, where it's updated graphics and cutscenes done by Blur Studios.
Nice.
Which is a fantastic animation company that's done a ton of cutscenes for other games, as well as, if you recall, the original animated short that was the test footage for Deadpool that got leaked before Deadpool got made.
Yeah.
That was the studio responsible for that.
Really?
And I think for just the CGI in the movie, Blur was responsible in the full release, I think.
That's my cat's name.
Is Blur?
Blur.
Is it very fast?
She is. She's very fast. She attacks at lightning speed.
Nice. Always nice to be attacked by a cat. Let's see. Some other little tidbits. There was a bunch of bonus content for Casualties of Cool, because this was a crowdfunded album.
Right.
And so for people who donated extra amounts of money to help get the album made and released, they put out a whole bunch of bonus content. Most of it was like Devin's B-sides and that sort of thing, or slightly different versions of songs on the album.
I didn't get to hear any of that.
You did not. I also have not heard this.
Oh, wow. What is your favorite song on this album, by the way?
Oh, that is an amazing question.
I know what mine is.
I feel like we might have the same answer.
Let's see what it is.
I think I'm gonna have to say
this is the one I listened to over and over.
Okay. I think I'm gonna have to say Mountaintop.
Oh, mine was The Bridge.
The Bridge is fantastic. That is
song.
It's the penultimate. It's technically the penultimate song, but really it is the finale of the album. The last song, which is Pure, is really is more of a denouement than a conclusion. It is the falling action, really, of the album. Boom! Literary terms.
Denouement. There we go. All right. Yeah.
But The Bridge is the epic conclusion to the album. It's heavenly.
It is beautiful.
The word that I can describe it. And it contains the second instance of Devin really letting it go.
Right. And then you almost get distorted guitars sort of floating up in there.
You more of what I feel like, because there is an energy throughout so much of the album where you feel like there's something explosive just barely being held back underneath the surface. And I think Deathscope, a couple songs before, I think Deathscope is the first time that kind of bubbles up towards the end, where Devin has some rougher, gruff vocals that show up. I'm afraid. I can't do it because he's amazing, but
because he's Devin. Yeah,
heavy
Devin.
But then on the bridge that comes up again, but it is very much sort of this pounding, just beautiful, like heavenly choir that's releasing this man from his, I guess, torment that has been happening while he's been on this planet.
Through the whole album.
He's been journeying. And the music video that I watched for Mountaintop shows this astronaut on sort of this rickety, it looks like a ship. He's standing on the top in his spacesuit, and there's a little robot. His little robot buddy is at the steering wheel, and he sees this planet, and there's, his scanner goes off, and he's like, let's go visit that. And then soon enough, he sees this mountain where there's this woman at the top, and he's immediately hypnotized and drawn towards her. And these, skeletal hands start creeping up out of the soil, and this robot, who's unaffected by the hypnotism, is like, dude, what are you doing? And he tries to keep the man from going to the top of the mountain. And then when he goes to the top of the mountain, he finds the radio that is on the cover of the album. And I really like Mountaintop. I think that's my favorite. I don't fault you at all for loving the bridge, because that is fantastic. I seem to come back so much to Mountaintop.
Right.
One of the other ones that I forget about and then I rediscover it is Ether, which is hey, we'll keep on moving, we'll find our way home, we'll keep on. I'm gonna hate myself again
for singing, but that's fine. No, that's awesome. That's a great song.
Ether's great.
Yeah,
I really like that one. I can't remember. I think it's Bones is where you sort of learn about the woman a little bit, and you learn that she is held there. It's most of Bones is Che by herself, and there's the line which is these bones are. It's something to the effect of, these bones are the men who have come before and fell at my feet and have succumbed to their own fears and the terror of this planet. And you get the feeling that she doesn't mean to be like the vessel for this entity, and she doesn't want to be. And there's references to her trying to comfort this man who is on this journey, basically to free her and free himself from this strange entity that is controlling this world. And if I hadn't read the concept, I don't think I would have gotten any of that.
Sure.
I had originally assumed this album was about like even like a murderess or something like that. It's because of Bones specifically, like some woman who keeps on like killing her lovers for some reason, like a Black Widow type situation, but she doesn't mean to.
Right.
That's what I had thought, and then the end is her overcoming that or something to that effect, or this man in her life overcoming that with her, or something like that. And that was completely shattered, but that's still an emotion that is in my head, and a notion that I have about the album that I feel like will be a little hard to shake, because there are a lot of albums that I've listened to where I don't necessarily understand the concept behind it, but I form my own attachments to it, and those don't fade away.
Sure. Well, it's hard to do that.
Do you have any like albums like that where you've come up with your own interpretation of it beforehand and then later learned
definitely
like author intention?
Definitely.
Is there any that come to mind?
None that come to mind off the top of my head. No, you put me on the spot.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
One of the ones that is kind of like that is Jane Doe. I didn't have a ton of like, I knew because I listened to Jane Doe because I was reading about it, and I was going like, oh hey, so many people love this album, and it was a critical darling basically, where so many critics were like, this is amazing, and I didn't get it because I didn't get Converge at the time.
Sure.
And that's how I got Converge, is I listened to it and I was like, oh wow, I understand
now I get it.
But I always knew that it was basically about a breakup and about sort of a explosive deconstruction of a relationship and that sort of thing. I got that, but that is apparently the experience of a lot of Converge listeners, because Jacob Bannon's vocals are so utterly unintelligible, because it's the emotion that matters.
Sure.
In a Converge song, it's the feeling. And because his lyrics are so unintelligible because of his vocals, a lot of people formed their own interpretations of the album before they
made up their own concept
and made up their own lyrics too. Because if you didn't have the lyric book, which at times is intentionally misleading, I think we talked about that on your first episode.
Yeah.
When we talked about Jane Doe
back in October,
the some of the lyrics in the lyric book were intentionally misleading.
Right.
That they were not actually what's in the album.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's I don't know. Time is it?
I have no idea.
You're my timekeeper. I should really have like a little clock or something on the table.
8:06.
8:06. So yeah, I think it's time for us to bring this pony back on in
the stable.
Let's pet him a little bit.
Calm him down.
Before we've used this analogy before.
Whisper in his ear a bit.
What are we whispering to the pony?
You're a good pony.
Also, pony. If I'm not going to keep listening, because if I keep on whispering, it's going to be like an ASMR thing. Before we put this pony to sleep, because that's a thing you can do with a pony. You're like, all right, now pony, lay down and go to bed.
Shot.
This isn't chloroform. Well, you wouldn't give him a shot of chloroform.
Hey, pony, smell this.
Smell this rag, pony. If you like this sort of thing, just a couple of dudes sitting around discussing music that they like, please check out our social media accounts and like them, follow them, and share our posts. Our posts are mostly made up of just the links to the episode.
Exactly.
I'm not crowding your feed with a whole bunch of other stuff that maybe you don't care about. It's just the episode. So you can find us on Facebook, Bronze Metalist. I think it might be Bronze Metalist Podcast. Either or will probably get you to us.
Yeah.
Twitter.
We'll talk more about metal.
In a later date. We're doing a thing for March where we're not necessarily talking about metal.
Right. Even though we're talking about Heavy Debbie.
Yeah, we are talking about Devin Townsend, who is a metal
icon,
basically. Yeah. But you can also do the same thing on Twitter, Bronze Metalist Podcast. That'll get you there. You'll be able to find us. And you can share, retweet our posts. Let your friends know about this podcast if it seems like the sort of thing they'd be interested in, because I'm not paying for advertising.
No.
So the only way we get new listeners is either by people coming across us by random chance, which doesn't happen a whole lot.
No.
Or you sharing it with your like-minded friends.
And once again, if you want us to talk about
we haven't done this in a while.
We haven't talked about this in a while. If you want us to talk about you, send us some money and we will gladly just rant and rave about you and your name and whoever you are.
Maybe I'll set up a Venmo account.
Sure.
What's the cutoff where you have to report income?
It's not going to be where we are.
We won't have to worry about
Don't worry about
within
that.
Within the next next year, we won't have
we'll
to worry
burn
about
that bridge when we get there.
Who knows? We might have a wondrously successful Patreon account.
That would be awesome.
No, so I guess if that's something you're interested in, I'll set up a Venmo account.
We'll figure it out.
Or something like that. So next week, our announcement for next week, and the idea that I had,
is
we're going to sit down together, if we can.
This is going to be awesome.
And watch Lords of Chaos.
Oh yeah,
the recent, I guess technically 2018. It came out in the States recently, last month. It is a movie directed by Jonas Åkerlund, who is I think he's a drummer, he makes music videos now, but he has been associated with various black metal bands early in his career as a musician. And as a director, he's made various music videos, I think some for Lady Gaga, Metallica, big names. And this is possibly his first feature-length film. I'm not sure. But it is about the early history of the black metal band Mayhem, the OG Norwegian black metal band. We talked about them in the first week of January.
But how much we didn't like that album.
Yeah, about how much certain parts of that album were very grating and sort of the problems that we have with Mayhem's early history, especially, and them as people. And I've heard a lot of mixed things
about the documentary.
It's not a documentary.
It's not really a documentary.
It's a dramatization. It's a biopic almost for Euronymous.
Which he's a dick.
He's a dick, and he's dead. Very, very dead.
Very, very stabbed to death.
Very, very stabbed to death. Spoiler alert. But it is a movie about the early history of Mayhem, and it'll be interesting. We'll talk about it next week for our very first movie review. That's something that we can do every now and then. I feel like is specifically if we can find movies that feature metal in some capacity.
I'll bring the snacks.
You'll bring the snacks.
I'll bring the snacks. I guess it's my turn to bring the beer too, so I'll bring the snacks and beer.
Snacks and beer. There we go.
All right.
And we'll sit down and watch Lords of Chaos soon, and then tell you all about our thoughts on the film. So that's what you have to look forward to next week. In the meantime, thank you all very much for listening to another episode of the Bronze Metalist Podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
Congratulations. Pour some beer. What are you doing? Angle that shit.
I like a little bit of head.
I suppose you're right. Well, because that's always the challenge with me is like getting the right amount of head. If you know what I mean.
That's right. I get you.
Have you ever? You know, one thing that really pissed me off.
What's that?
On Cheers. Is whenever Woody Harrelson would pour a fucking beer, and it would be like 90% head because he would just pour it straight in. It was like, what the fuck, Woody?
What are you doing?
I know you drink enough beer. You should know how to pour one.